I kind of went a unique path, maybe unorthodox towards what I do now. And so I can kind of tell you the ending and then how I got here. So I work for an organization called Compassion in World Farming. We're a global animal welfare organization specifically dedicated to improving the lives of the billions of animals raised for food in our food system. So I tend to see a lot of people that come to this path more with the animal science background or environmental stewardship, and all of that is important. For me, though, it was more of a change of heart and really thinking about how can we tell the story and make people care about this issue to really evoke change. So I grew up in Michigan. And I was fortunate enough to live kind of in the woods, even though I was in a small town just a few miles away from our downtown where there was a bustling culture. But I grew up really in 8 acres of the forest and being able to walk in our woods and pretty much every day or every week and be able to breathe the fresh air, feel that connectivity of being in this environment around all of these trees, and also seeing the animals that were around, whether they were deer or squirrels and even turkeys. And we still have them at my parents' house of this family of turkeys and deer that they go out and feed every day. And one of the first memories that I had, a kind of environmental activism, I think I was maybe 4 to 6 years old, and there was this tree that wasn't flowering for a few years. And so my parents had hired a landscaping company to come out and take it down. And I don't know why I felt convicted to say this, but I came out and I was like screaming and saying, no, don't take it down, don't take it down. And my parents just didn't really understand why I was so concerned about it. And they said, okay, we'll just like put her at bay, calm her down. We won't take down the tree. And sure enough, years after that, it finally started to bloom. And I didn't realize how powerful of that kind of message it would be throughout my narrative of my story and my journey until, of course, after the fact, and thinking about it from really the idea of responsibility and stewardship and really caring for those that can't speak up for themselves. So separate from that environment when I grew up, my parents exposed me to riding horses at a petting zoo kind of thing. With one of my birthdays, I think I was 4, and I got hooked. And horses are still part of my life, and that really got me involved with 4-H. And so that exposed me to agriculture and made me start thinking, where does our food come from? And I had really no idea of where our meat, dairy, and eggs come from. I was a typical suburban type diet of meat and potatoes in the Midwest and a glass of milk every day. And that was what we ate, and we didn't really ever talk about it. And it was between agriculture with 4-H exposure and me wanting to pet the pigs and the cows and get more involved. And really, then I started seeing videos and documentaries when I was about 13. And I saw the horrors of how pigs are raised right now in the United States in gestation crates. And I couldn't unsee it. And for me, it wasn't a scientific argument. It wasn't about looking at the cortisol levels of stress within the pigs. It was something that said to me, this is wrong, this is immoral, and this has to change. And so after that, I started thinking, how can I start advocating for these animals that don't have a voice and that people aren't thinking about? And most people now, knowing all of the statistics and the consumer studies, the majority of Americans don't like how, once they learn about this, they're not happy with how the animals are housed and raised, but there's just such a disconnect with the way that these animals are raised on farm and what ends up on the grocery store and what's told in packaging. So I really thought that my vision of how can we create a social movement around helping these animals, that's really where I found my voice and wanted to fill that void in the marketplace. And so in addition to all of this, I had a religious upbringing of Catholicism. And I think that was also really unique, where I was able to take the religious values of the Eucharist, and having the body become food is very applicable, I guess, to my work now, and thinking about how can we actually create this emotional response to the food that we're eating 3 times a day, and how Christ became the bread of the world. And it's not just on Sundays that Christians can experience this spiritual movement, but if we look at the book of John and how he became the Word, and the Word was at the beginning, and the Word is in all of flesh, thinking about it from an eco-spiritual perspective, if God and if Christ is in all of our food, then there's this ritualistic element of breaking bread with family and friends 2 to 3 times a day, and having that emotional conviction to the food that we eat and consume, and it becomes life for us. So that was really my journey to this. And some of the people that I was the most inspired with was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And this idea of creating a social movement around this really came from religious leaders. And that I think is a really opportune experience for people in this religious space to talk to people every Sunday about our food and where it comes from and the implications for animals and humans, whether it's a human rights issue, an environmental justice issue, or an animal welfare issue. So that was kind of my journey to this and how it came to be. And to me, it makes a lot of sense, but sometimes it takes some time to explain the connection with food and faith and farming. But it really helped me with, especially my training when I was at Michigan State in my undergrad with religious studies, and then at Yale Divinity School, being able to speak the language of these farmers that are working with animals every day has really helped me build that bridge and be able to meet them where they are and break bread with them on farm and really talk about these issues that are really complex.